Anytime you get a new hobby or you start making something new, it comes with new supplies, new tools, and if you don't organize those things, they can get out of control. Like this, my 3D printing filament is out of control. So today we're gonna make a material library, not just for 3D printing stuff, but for whatever you're into as well. Let's give it a shot. So I've got a legitimate storage problem here. I've been 3D printing a lot more lately, and I've got a couple of really big projects coming up. So I've accumulated like 40-something rolls of filament. I do have some shelves on the wall, and they hold some of it, but I don't have enough room for all of it on the walls. So I've got to come up with another way to store all of that stuff. I've also gotten some new printers lately, and I've upgraded a few of them, and I want to have them available all the time. Right now, I can't even get to all of them. So I want to use this as an opportunity to have storage on the bottom, but also a surface on the top that can hold 1 or 2 printers. I will tell you something this is not gonna be. This is not temperature and humidity controlled filament storage. We've done that before. In fact, we made a video about it. So if you wanna go check that out, you can, or you can just buy a cabinet like that from somebody like Repcord. But in this case, it's purely about organization and storage. Now to figure out this design, I'm assuming 35 to 40 rolls of filament. I may get more in the future and I'll figure that out. But the rolls of filament usually come in a bag or in a box, but they roughly take up the same amount of space. I'm gonna go ahead and use the box as my measurement device because it's a box and it's easy to measure. When you go between companies, they have different packaging and some of the boxes are even different sizes. So I've got to go with the biggest box, and in my case, that's the Prusament boxes. This dimension's about the same on everything, but I'm gonna go with this thickness as my kind of general thickness for everything and design around that. So here's what I need out of this thing. A surface that I can put a couple of printers on a cabinet that I can store a whole bunch of filament in, but I also need a place to put some tools. So we're gonna have a long, shallow drawer that can pull out to hold all the finishing tools and just miscellaneous stuff that you need around 3D printing. Down in this bottom area, I've got to store, again, 35, 40, 45 rolls of filament, and I've got to have a way to get to it from the front. This cabinet is gonna be up against other things, so I've got to get to all of it from the front face, but I have an idea. A couple of years ago, I made this paint booth, and I'm actually probably gonna rebuild it soon, but the thing I really liked about it is that you had the work area up top, and then down below, you have a ridiculous amount of storage. Every one of these pullouts holds a huge amount of paint. In fact, only about half of these have anything in them. It's too much. But I think this vertical drawer thing is a great way to store a whole bunch of stuff and get to it from the side. It's gonna be perfect for filament. I'm freezing, let's go back in the house. So building the little material pullouts will be the kind of interesting part, but first we have to build a cabinet for them to go in, and that means we have to cut down some plywood. Okay, I got all the panels cut, got some pocket holes put in. This is gonna be a pretty basic cabinet carcass. But even with simple projects, you do have to take a minute to think about the order of operations to make sure that you can physically put it together. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I've got a couple of constraints that I'm putting on myself, and that's causing me to think about how I put this together. The big thing is that this centerpiece underneath the drawer needs to be captured in dados on each side, and that's so that I don't have to put screws in from the outside and then you see them. So typically I would start with that, but if I put the whole thing together with that in place, and then I go to add pocket holes on the sides up into the top, I actually can't fit in this little 3-inch space. So just thinking through all the different joinery, even if it's simple, before you get started, lets you know which pieces you need to do first. So in my case, I need to make sure that I actually attach the top to the sides first, then I can attach all of this stuff together and slide it in place. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So now you can see what I'm saying. If I put these pieces together like this and then had to put in those pocket hole screws, there's pretty much no way I could do it. So I have to do the top first, but while I've got it together, I can double check my measurements. This video is sponsored by BetterHelp. Now, if you've ever been at a point in your life where you thought, I wonder if therapy would be a good thing for me, that's a great indication that you should give it a shot. And BetterHelp's job is to help connect you with a therapist, because that part can be kind of difficult. But with BetterHelp, you just go to the website, you fill out a little questionnaire about who you are, what your needs are. You'll get matched with a licensed therapist in most cases within 48 hours. After that, you can connect with that therapist in whatever way works for you on your schedule, whether it's a video call or a text message. There's lots of different options. And if that therapist is not a great fit for you, you can switch at any time at no cost. Luckily, BetterHelp's network is over 30,000 licensed therapists with all sorts of specialties, so there's definitely somebody that's going to be a great fit for your situation. Therapy is a great way to get unbiased advice and help with the things that are going on in your life, whether it's big stuff or just the hard stuff that we all have to deal with on a regular basis. You should definitely check it out and see if it's a good fit for you. You can hit the link down in the description or go to betterhelp.com/ILTMS and that'll give you 10% off your first month of therapy. Go check it out. Big thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. The carcass is complete and it went together super well except for one little thing. To save a little bit of money, I decided to use wood that I already had. Now the problem with that is that both of these pieces have a little bit of a bend in them, which means I have to work around it. That's causing me to change how I'm doing the drawer. I was gonna do one really big, probably too big drawer. Instead, I'm gonna split it into 2 drawers. That will allow me to put a piece of wood vertically in between these 2 to tie them together to help get rid of the bow a little bit. I also wanted to point out that I did model this entire thing in Fusion 360 before I got started, solved a bunch of problems, figured out how big it needed to be and all that type of stuff. But then I ended up using material I had in the shop and that changed the plan a little bit. But I'm saying that because I think it can be really awesome to 3D model your idea before you ever buy material or cut material because it helps you solve problems before you have to deal with them. This is really simple construction. Basically, we've got 3 bookcases that are open this direction and they're gonna slide in and out of this. So you're gonna be able to open it, put on some filament, and then close it. Really simple construction, pocket holes, 1/2-inch plywood, but first we gotta cut down a whole bunch of pieces. I ran into a little bit of a problem. I've done pocket holes in 1/2-inch plywood before and it worked, but it's been a really long time. And this time, the tip of the screw is so close to the end of the material that it's just barely poking out. I don't want to mess with that, so I think I'm just gonna glue and brad nail the rest of this together, and then I'll reinforce it if I need to. So now, this thing is gonna go right here, and it's still gonna get a face on the front of it. I'm gonna do that last because I want all 3 of them to kind of work together and be spaced correctly. But this needs to be able to move in and out, and it's gonna happen in 2 ways. You could actually just put this thing on casters and pull it out, maybe roll it around and have it independent completely. I wanna have them connected so it can move in and out, but it's also kind of captured. I'm gonna put a drawer slide in between this outer wall and this back wall so it can move like that, and it's gonna be sitting on 2 fixed casters so it only moves in one direction. I made a couple of really simple drawers and they worked out great. But while I was putting those in, it actually made me realize that I made a mistake with these pullouts. Luckily, the problem is totally fixable, but it came to me when I was thinking about putting on faces on the drawers and on these pullouts, and I was thinking about how to keep the gap in between all of those drawer faces even. The problem is that I only put 1 drawer slide on these pullouts. Imagine you put a door face on all 3 of these things. You want to keep the gap in between those door faces the same, but with a single drawer slide here, it acts as a pivot point. It pivots on that drawer slide, so the entire thing can move back and forth. And if you've got 2 of those next to each other doing that, then the gap is not going to stay the same. Luckily, the solution is just to add another drawer slide. So now, when you pull them out, they can't pivot on a single point and they're gonna stay in line much better than they would have otherwise. Maybe not perfect, but good enough. And that brings us to the front of this thing. All of these individual door faces and drawer fronts. I was gonna do plywood and edge band, but it's just so boring, and I've done a lot of that stuff. So instead, I'm gonna use MDF and just try to make it artsy, designy, I don't know. I wanna add some sort of a texture to the front of it. I think I'm just gonna do that on the table saw and just try to make it more interesting. And then I'm gonna paint it. So for the past while, I've been trying to come up with what the front of this thing should look like. Some sort of a textural treatment, some sort of just aesthetic improvement that I could add. And honestly, this is something I have a lot of trouble with. I am definitely a person who thinks about how something should work way more than I think about what it should look like. Putting a design on the front of this that really serves no purpose, that's just there for aesthetics, that's kind of tough for me to come up with. So what I'm trying to do right now is just lay out the front of this thing and add a design to it as one big panel, using some spacers to hold the doors apart And then I'm gonna use this same material to just add some stripes, some texture. I don't know, I'm gonna play with it until I find something that I like. So I tried quite a few different things to come up with something interesting for the front of this cabinet. Everything I tried just didn't look good. And so now I moved on to masking. I used some masking tape to make a kind of interesting design, and I could just fill those lines in and make it geometric, but that's what I would normally do. And I'm trying to push myself into something new. So I'm gonna get some spray paint and try to make it kind of artsy. It might look terrible, but either way, I'm trying to stretch myself. I don't know, I'm not an artist. We'll have to see what it looks like after I pull the masking off, but once I do that, this thing is finally finished. Now this thing was supposed to just be for utility's sake, and it absolutely is. I've now got storage for all the tools and supplies around 3D printing, and I've got deep storage for 46 rolls of filament. And of course, I've still got the shelves above the printers that I can use for spools that are open or active or in use. But the thing that really surprised me about this project was that I ended up accidentally making a piece of art. And whether that art is your thing or not isn't really the point. It was a stretch for me. It was something that I'm not really comfortable with, but I will say I'm pretty happy with how it came out. I hope this video gave you some sort of an idea to improve your workspace, whether it's on the utility side of things or on the artistic side of things. And if it did either one of those, let me know down in the comments. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Now it's time for bloopers. Every one of these Every one of these drawer pull-outs. All right. Hopefully this video gave you some ideas, a way to make your workspace more... If you want to check it out, I'll put links down in the description, so check it out, I don't know.